Hey everyone, welcome to Facebook Live with SOS Children's Villages. Thank you for joining our Voices from the Field Syria Q&A. My name is Allison Wheeler and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at SOS Children's Villages. We are going to have an intense discussion today about Syria and what is facing children today, but it's an important discussion. So we thank all of you that are taking the time to join us today. As many of you know, March marks the 8th year of the war in Syria. So we wanted to take this time to focus in and really talk about how this devastating conflict is affecting children, an entire generation of children. Even as we sit here today, we are deeply, deeply concerned about the reports that we have been receiving about the intensified fighting in the eastern suburbs of Damascus, affecting children, families, and entire communities. We know that children, not only in these areas, but all around Syria, are really facing significant challenges and are suffering like children should not have to suffer, from violence, from loss of family, disruption of their education, and frankly, the loss of the happy childhood that they deserve. To tell you more about the children of Syria, we have invited here today a very special guest, an incredible humanitarian who has worked on the front lines with children in Syria. It is my deep honor to speak with Abeer Pamuk. Thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule and joining us. Abeer is a born and raised in Syria and a former SOS employee, and I'm very proud to call her a colleague. And she has a very unique perspective that she is going to share with us today. She's currently in the United States right now as an Atlas Corps Fellow, which is a professional development program for nonprofit leaders. So welcome, Abeer.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you for inviting me to have this chance to have this conversation. I hope that this conversation will leave you with a closer perspective on what's going on in Syria for children, for families, and basically for the entire Syrian population. I hope it will be informative, and I hope that you really go out of this energized to take a step in and do something today for the children of Syria.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we get started, just a quick couple of housekeeping items. Some of you just may be joining us. Thank you very much. We are doing a Voice from the Field Syria Q&A with Abeer Pamuk. We'll be talking about children in Syria. We think we'll be talking for about 20 to 25 minutes. Thank you to all of you that are joining. We appreciate that you've taken your time to join, and we'd like you to be involved. So go ahead and send us your questions, your comments, and we'll answer those during our time together. So let's go ahead and get started. Abeer, would love to hear about you growing up in Syria, your experience. Let's start there.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Aleppo, Syria, which, believe it or not, used to be a great, vibrant city. I was raised by a single mother, whom in my eyes is the strongest woman I've ever came across. She raised me as a child to always step into the lives of others and leave a good impact. She raised me to never turn my face away or to never ignore somebody who needs my help, even if it's something small that I can do for them. She raised me and my brother in Syria, which you can imagine, even before the war, being a single mother anywhere in the world. I imagine it's a tough mission. Even after the war, that became even harder. So that is a little bit about where I was raised, who raised me. This is what my family looks like. Okay. Back in Aleppo.
Okay, and I know from our conversations that you studied at the University of Aleppo. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences at the university and then how you came to work for SOS?
Sure. So the war in Syria started when I was a sophomore. So I was in my first year of studies when an extremist group occupied a street behind my house. I was forced to flee to Lebanon, thinking, the entire country was in this denial phase of how serious this will get. So I fled to Lebanon thinking that it'll be 2-3 months and I'll be back to Syria. That unfortunately didn't happen. I was there 6 months in when the University of Aleppo was bombed on the 15th of January 2013. That day turned my life over. I took the decision. It took me the entire day basically to figure out where my friends are, where my mother is. She works right in a nearby hospital. It was such a traumatic experience that made me realize that Syria is a crisis and that I have a mission, I have a responsibility. I need to get back and start looking for a job with a humanitarian agency and help people, which is what I did. I got back. I re-enrolled myself in the University of Aleppo to continue my education. I studied English literature and I started looking for jobs. This is how I came across or heard about the emergency relief program in Syria. It was brand new in 2013. The reason I picked SOS is because in any given crisis, whether it's war, natural disaster, anything that's happening anywhere, the most vulnerable part of the society is children. I knew that if adults don't step in and take action towards what's happening to children, then we are losing future. Children are future, and if you don't invest in them now, you will not have a very bright future. So I wanted a bright future to Syria, for Syria, and this is how I joined SOS.
Okay. Yeah. And so you started with the emergency response program in Aleppo, and then you moved to the office in Damascus. So I think I'll just take a moment here for those of you that aren't as familiar with the SOS programs in SOS in Syria. SOS runs a variety of programs. We started in 1981 with our first village in Damascus. We most recently built another village this past October 2017. The organization runs care programs as well as educational support programs for vulnerable and abandoned children to make sure that they have every opportunity. We also run emergency response programs, like Abeer was telling us about, where we're really focused on providing not just immediate relief, but also care and protection of children, including psychological support to help children and families heal. I will just take a brief moment. If you've just joined us, thank you again for joining Voices from the Field. I'm Allison Wheeler with SOS Children's Villages, and I'm joined by Abeer Pamuk, who is a former SOS colleague from SOS Syria, and we are talking about the impact of the war on children in Syria. So Abeer, tell us a little bit about, since you came to SOS, you started working with the children of SOS. Tell us, what is it like? What was your view of the experience of children that you were working with?
I think the most dangerous thing that I've seen through the stories of children that I came across is children who are no longer children. You sit there, you try to hear the story, the horrible story that this child is about to tell you. They are some of them tell their stories without shedding a single tear. If you close your eyes, you'll think that you're talking to a person who's 40 years old. Like they've seen in their 7 years of life or 10 years of life what most of us haven't seen, or a lot of adults haven't seen in 50 years, which is scary. You have children who, like, when people ask me about life in Syria or life of children or people in Syria, there's a big difference between living or being alive. Living is basically just surviving. So you have these children constantly surviving day in and day out in Syria. They don't have time to play. They don't have time to be children. You have a lot of people who have been displaced 5, 6, 10 times forced out of their homes, got out with nothing. You have all these children trying to work to help their families meet the end of each month. So you have all these children with really big responsibilities, such as trying to find money to be able to live, trying to find a place to sleep, trying to find food to eat. These are not the responsibility of a child. These should come in your life by default, because an adult is responsible to provide this for you. Your family is responsible to provide this for you. And that is not the case in Syria. Unfortunately, children in Syria currently aren't living, they are surviving day in and day out. Every day they're born again. Every day is an entire new life for them. Their lives have been flipped over. It is absolutely, I can't call it living, unfortunately. Living means a child who is not concerned what they're going to eat today, who is not concerned where they're going to get money from, a child whose only job is to go to school, enjoy their life, pay attention to their development, to their education, to what children usually do.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. From what I understand from my colleagues that work in emergency response and work in situations like what's happening with Syria today, is the psychological trauma that children are experiencing. What did you see? How do children begin to heal after witnessing such horrific things?
Exactly. That is actually a very good question, Allison, because people usually tend to focus on really emergency relief, which is really, really important to get people access, like immediate access to food, water, hygiene. That's very important, which SOS does in Syria. But what really sets SOS in a different path, or like comparing to other missions, is the long-term care. You have a child who have witnessed the death of their own parents in front of their eyes, who have woke up in hospitals. Like, this is the scenario of tens of children that I interviewed in Syria. What were you doing? What happened in your life? Mm-hmm. The only thing they can remember is playing outside, a bomb fell, I woke up in hospital, the area is besieged, I can't go back, I don't know if my parents are there, nobody asked about me in the hospital. So they really don't know. Like, literally in one day, they were playing outside their home and they woke up in a hospital. The next day, they're out in the street. So, I mean, you can imagine how much trauma or how much emotional damage this child have. So if they're out in the street and there's no intervention, there's nobody to help them navigate this, or navigate what happened, navigate being wounded in a hospital, navigate not knowing where your parents are, what is this child going to be 10 years from now? Mm-hmm. You need, in places like Syria, immediate relief is really important. But what's really, even to me and to a lot of the children that I met, is the long-term care. You need to help this person navigate what just happened with them. The Syrian children will never forget images of their parents being killed in front of their eyes, or watching their entire cities, streets, schools, entire communities collapse around. They will never forget that. But they need somebody to step in and tell them, listen, you'll never forget this, but there's a way out of it. Mm-hmm. You have control over this. Here is how you do it. I am going to take care of your shelter and food and education. I am going to provide you with psychological support to be able to overcome this. You are going to be a producer in the society. If they don't grow up listening to these words, if they don't grow up having the support, then you're looking at an entire lost generation in Syria.
So let's talk about that a little bit more. What are the risks of children not receiving the care that they need, not being welcomed into a family, not, reconnecting with the family, not having psychological support? What are the risks for these children?
Well, you can imagine, if you imagine the scenario that I was just mentioning a couple of moments ago, a child who woke up in hospital and don't know anything about their family, they're out in the street. They're going to be facing things such as sexual abuse. They're going to be, let's say, working in a fast food restaurant. You can only imagine the environment that's surrounding this child, of people screaming in their face. Maybe some people will be kind to them, but like, that is such an adult environment for this child. It's consuming a huge amount of their time during the day. They have to work. They don't have time to go to school or write a homework or play or have any kind of like fun moment during their day.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not taking care of them at this age, then in the future you have a person who has lost, who is drained and exhausted. I mean, even adults get exhausted of their jobs. So you can imagine yourself. Can you imagine yourself that you have started to work at the age of 6 or 5?
Wow. And
by the time that you're 25, you've been working for 15 years? You're exhausted, you're drained, you don't have any hope for the future. You'll have a person who have totally lost hope to do something about their lives. If you don't, this is a really critical phase. Being a child is a very critical phase. What you do now, it is the future. The surroundings of these children, that the circumstances that are surrounding them today, gives you a really almost clear picture of what the future will look like.
Right. So you have seen and experienced so much, Abeer. What has been the biggest challenge for you working with children in Syria?
That is a very good question. I think when there's a big difference between being a humanitarian deployed to another country and being a humanitarian in your own country. A lot of my colleagues in SOS will be able, especially in Syria, if you're watching now, you'll be able to relate to this. You go to the field, you know that your organization is serving a lot of people, but every day when you get back home, there are more people that need help. There are more people out there that don't have access to your services or the services of other organizations. A lot of days I got back home and I wish that I sleep and wake up and somebody will tell me it's over. There's no war in Syria. Your work is no longer needed. That is unfortunately not the case. Unfortunately, we keep having ups and downs of escalation of fighting. There is a huge influx, like thousands of people each time these fightings intensify. Thousands of people lose their homes. Thousands of children lose their families. There is a huge need in Syria every single day, 7 years on.
So how do you keep going? What motivates you? I mean, these are very difficult circumstances. What motivates you to keep going?
Here's a moment, like one of the moments that I love remembering, and there are a lot of such moments that I remember from SOS in Syria that not only motivated me to keep working when I was in Syria, but motivate me to keep like having the aim of working on Syria in the future. I was walking into the interim care center one day where children are kept until SOS figures out where their family is, if their family is alive, before they're moved into a longer term program or get reunited with their family. There was this little girl whom, when I first met her, her ultimate dream in life is to be able to write her name. Can you imagine that how simple that dream is and how big of a deal it was for that little girl? And she ran all her way to me and she's like, look, I wrote my name. Look, I know how to write my name now. So in such circumstances, to see that I met the happiest humans I've ever seen in life are children with SOS who were given a slight chance of normal life, a slight chance of being normal, like not having to care about like where to sleep or what to eat, like how to eat or do all these adult like lifestyle, and are given like a slight chance to be normal, just write your name on a paper. That made her the happiest person ever.
Right.
That keeps me going. That gives me hope that you really, when you invest, you see the impact, like it's a pattern. You invest, you'll have a happy, healthy child, a contributor to the future in Syria when they are adults. You don't invest, you will have a horrible future. You are looking straight at it.
So what is your message? If you could leave us with a thought or a message, all the people that have joined us to listen to Abeer Pamuk as we talk about the impact of the Syrian war on children, what would be the message that you would leave?
I have said this before, I long for the day when Syria's children are running for fun, not from rockets, to the day that Syrian children are living their lives, not surviving day in and day out in Syria. And the message I would like to give here, or the picture that I want to paint, children are gold. They are the future. You have the chance today, right now, to craft this gold into something. Or you have the chance to leave it right there on the street. And our world today has less borders with all the social media, with all the things that you can do to connect to others. There is no more, like, we shouldn't say, oh, I live in America and Syria is so far. Why would I care? Or, for example, to say, I'm a Middle Eastern, I live there. Why would I care about children in Africa? It is our responsibility today to invest in every child around. It is our responsibility to craft this gold into future. It is not the future of Syria. The future of Syria is a part of the world. Our world is connected. It is an investment in our future, all of us. And if we don't invest now, if you can imagine yourself, for example, in the morning, right, taking your coffee, preparing your children to school, and the news comes out about Syria and it says, there are 3 million Syrian children who are orphaned and abandoned, living without their families in the Middle East region. Can you just, before you do the next thing in your kitchen, just stand for a second and imagine 3 million adults who have been through tremendous amount of trauma, long-term trauma, who have not been helped to navigate this. What is the future of this? 3 million people who are not helped when they were children. So what I would like to say is that we have a chance right now. It is not a favor that we're doing to these children. It is a favor that we're doing to ourselves. If we invest in every child that's passing through such circumstances, it is our responsibility all to craft the future of our world right now.
I couldn't agree more with Abeer. Many of you are watching and thinking about, well, what can I do? How can I take action? You might be sitting in your kitchen, sitting at work. That I think we've had a conversation today about the importance of taking an active role in the next generation for the children of Syria. And we invite you to be part of that solution by investing in the long-term care of children in Syria, making sure that their immediate needs are met, as well as their long-term care. You have an opportunity right now. You can go to sos-usa.org/Syria and sponsor a child in Syria and provide that necessary long-term care. So I think we're going to pause for a moment. Unless, Abeer, you want to add one additional thing here?
Actually, yes. Thank you for allowing me the chance to do that. So one more thing I wanted to add to this is, as the situation in a country like Syria now, you feel like you're alone, right? So one of the moments that I wanted to share, and I remember in our office, is when for example, the sponsors of the children in SOS sent things like birthday cards to the children. Like somebody who's sitting out there somewhere in the world cared about your birthday, you know, sent you, again, like simple things like earrings or something, or, you know, like really, we used to receive really simple things. Like, you should see again the impact of that on a child. Like, we should never underestimate the emotions of people, the little details that make a situation like Syria feel a little bit more normal. Like, these simple things make a child who's living in a war zone, who's been through a lot, have this very little moment. Oh my God, somebody remembered my birthday. Like, just as they are thinking, maybe if my mom was alive today, she would have made me the greatest birthday ever. Or I remember the last day my mom was able to make me a birthday. They will never forget that they lost their mom. They will never forget, you know, having these moments and not having access to them now. But you have the chance today to create these little moments. It is what helps to build the resilience of these children, to navigate what's going on around them. And it is very important. I can't stress that enough, how important it is to take care of human emotions, to have contributors in the future as adults, to have people who are able to turn from the victim of circumstances into a person who's really able to change their circumstances and do something.
Agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to turn to the community that has been watching and listening to Abeer. We can take questions if there are any questions. Looks like we have a question coming about education. Can you tell us more about kids going to school in Syria?
Oh my God. Whoever asked that question, thank you a lot for trying to highlight a very important point. A lot of the schools in Syria, as you might imagine, have been bombed, destroyed, used as, you know, bases and stuff. Taking you back to Syria, to this one school that stays in my mind, is a school in Damascus in a very destroyed area. And the story was that the children and the teachers and the parents of this school had repainted the school. It is in a completely destroyed area. They have repainted it pink, in pink color. You enter the class, this child is sitting on a broken desk. They still have the determination to come to school, even though their desk is broken, their school had been bombed, they repainted it, rebuilt it again. They're going to school. And then going back to their houses, like to see where the houses of these children are, it's complete destruction. Like, you enter the house, there is like probably 2 rooms in the house that are down because a bomb fell in the building, took like a part of it. And you have this child coming back from school, taking out their bag, empty the books, and trying to carry the stones that are, you know, the remnants of their houses, taking them away, trying to clean up and get, you know, like, so educate. There is a very, very big need in Syria to have children, to get children access to education. There is a big need to help making these places, such as school, a safe place to be in. You shouldn't be sitting on your desk fearing for your life. How are you going to be able to focus and study when you are sitting there listening to the bombings that are happening around? This is the kind of environment that children in Syria attend school in.
Right.
You sit right there, you have this fear of being dead the next minute, and they still go. They have a tremendous amount of resilience. You just need to step in. You just need to, like, if this school was bombed, then we need to create more schools, more spaces where these children can go.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is like painting a picture of what going to school to Syria is like. It is like that. It lacks a lot of resources. People still go. It is in a lot of areas dangerous
Mm-hmm.
to go to school. I remember this child who's at her last year of high school in a very dangerous area in Aleppo called Salahdin, and she was telling me, I don't care about the bombings that are going to fall. If 20 bombs fall and I die, I don't care. What I care about is if I'm not able to get out of my house and go to the exam, and then I have to repeat the entire year again. So these are the kind of situations where children are trying to get access to education in Syria. Very
challenging situations, but also a lot of determination to make sure they have the opportunity to go to school.
Yes.
For those of you that may be watching, SOS is working on supporting getting children back to school when it is safe, getting them funding for schools, for uniforms, for materials, and really pushing to get kids back in school when it is safe to do so. We have another question coming in. Abeer, you've done so much for the children in Syria. Thank you. What are your future plans?
Future plans. Thank you for the question. My future plan is absolutely to keep being focused on Syria. I have pledged to dedicate my life to work on the Syrian crisis. I am trying to get an MA degree in conflict resolution and peace building, trying to dive into the root causes of what's going on in Syria and try to create an environment where there might basically become a mediator in what's happening and try to bring people together, try to be a part of bringing people together, ending the root causes that are causing the entire thing to flame over and over. It's been 8 years. It's enough. So these are my plans. If my life isn't enough to deal with the Syrian crisis, I'm going to teach it. So I have a lot of determination, a lot of focus. This is all I want to do in the future.
Well, thank you. You're definitely an inspiration to so many of us, and we appreciate all the work that you've done for children and families and communities in Syria, as well as taking the time to, share your story, as well as educating us on the situation on the ground in Syria for children. And we have one more question. That's coming in. Okay. We appreciate everybody sending their questions and being actively engaged in the Facebook Live session.
Yeah, really, really deep questions. So keep sending these our way.
Yep. Okay. Our question is, how do you think more attention could be paid to the trauma children are experiencing?
I think we need to start looking, again, the emotional side is always, there's a tendency to ignore how important it is, how humans feel or children feel when they are surrounded by such circumstances. So when you are, again, listening or observing numbers through social media or through the news, just stop for a moment and think, what is it like to wake up in a different world? Like to wake up having lost everything. If I'm going to compare this to something that, for example, people in America could relate to. For example, Hurricane Katrina. Like, what is it like to not have your house altogether, or having lost somebody just within one moment? This is what it's like in Syria. This is the kind of trauma that children are having, and it's even heavier because you can more easily navigate that a natural disaster. You don't have control over this. It's a natural disaster, but it's really even harder to navigate conflict. So just try, if you want to try understand what's going on, try to compare it to your life somehow. Even if your life seems that it's far away from what's going on in other parts of the world, try to take a moment and just, project this on your life. Like, imagine your own family, your own life being shaped in that way, and how would you feel, and what kind of support would you want? Don't you want your family to be around? If you have lost your family, don't you want a community that will support you? This is what children need in Syria.
And I would build on that and say, as you have said, it's important to acknowledge that it's part of what's going on when children experience this is the psychological element, making sure that their basic needs are met. But one of those basic needs is mental health.
Yes.
Acknowledging it. And as you said before, helping children navigate that.
Exactly.
I think that's absolutely critical. So I think we've gone through our allotted time. Thank you, everybody, for joining an intense conversation about what's going on in Syria, but a very important one. And if you were inspired by what you heard today, and inspired by Abeer and what she's done to support children, you can go ahead and go to sos-usa.org/Syria and sponsor a child and be a participant in helping children rebuild. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Abeer.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Abeer.
Thanks.